Hey, how you doing? Thanks for downloading the show. Welcome to Garden Fork Radio. It's Eclectic DIY. I'm Eric, your host. I have this podcast, and I also have a YouTube channel, also called Garden Fork. Got to get the words out there. I started the show a few minutes late because there were some sirens going on outside, and I'm in my living room, and I'm not quite sure if the microphone would pick up sirens or not. But yeah, sirens happen. So welcome. I thought this would be fun to kind of go over the two new emails I sent out, what I call the cool stuff email. I've gotten some good feedback. No one's written back and said, Eric, I don't like that. There have been some people that have unsubscribed, and I don't know if that's just what we would call a normal churn rate or not. I'm not a big numbers guy, but I guess I could look at that. Oh, tell you what. We will talk about the numbers and what's called the click-through rates in the after show. There we go. So anyway, I thought I'd just kind of go over a couple of things in the emails because I'm not quite sure if they really came across as to just how cool they are. I find stuff during the week. I barely watch any regular television. We watch some Netflix, some Apple TV. I mainly watch YouTube, or I'm reading a couple of people on Substack, or people send me things. Nicole sends me a lot of links, and so does Rick. And then I finally was like, I've had this giant list I've built in Apple Notes, which I like because it's in the cloud. I can look at it on my phone. I can look at it on the laptop or the desktop machine, and it saves it all for me. Because before that, well, my desk is still a freaking mess, but I just have little scraps of paper around, or a paper folder full of stuff. And that really didn't work for anybody. So yeah. The first one I talked about Project Camp, Austin Kleon, who has a really good Substack, The Guardian, an article about putting your phone down, the really cool black and white camera that I like, has that little kind of a pixelated thing. The guys who build tanks, the podcast called Strangers on a Bench. And I suggested people get a headlamp that has an LED light built into it, which has been really handy for me. If you've got something really tiny and you can't see it, I just go to my workshop shelf here and I pull off the little visor, and yeah, you can see things again. Surprise. I was kind of surprised that, no, I wasn't surprised at all. Anyway, I'm just trying to reset my brain here. Yeah, I really enjoy watching Project Camp or Project Comp. I think I've talked about it before in the newsletter. They're trying to create a sustainable community in Portugal on a piece of land they've bought. And through what seems like a lot of Europe, there are what they call ruins, which are buildings usually built of stone and lime mortar that are falling apart. And the parts that are falling apart were usually the roof, because the roof was probably built of wood, or wood with terracotta tile on top of it. So these guys have built individually some, like van, camper, RV homes, and they're going through the ruins that are in their property and rebuilding them. And I find that very interesting. They're using lime mortar because regular cement is not great for an old building because it dries way too hard, and it does. Portland modern cement does not breathe the way lime mortars do, and doesn't have the flex that lime mortars do. I actually see this in the buildings I have lived in New York City here. They're called row houses or townhouses or brownstones. The building is essentially a brick building, and the front facade has either limestone or brownstone as a decorative thing. And they're beautiful, I think. But I have we live in the garden floor, so we have a backyard, hence it's called garden floor. And you can see where people have repaired what's called the pointing, in other words, the cement around the bricks. And so this building was built in 1880, I believe, or 1890. So there was not, from what I understand, modern Portland cement at that point. and they used cements that weren't nearly as strong. And when that mortar has weakened or fallen out, that modern day contractors have come through here and repointed with modern hard cement. And the building flexes a little. It's an older building, especially with the older mortars, there's some flex to it. We do actually get earthquakes in New York City. They usually originate up in the Binghamton area, but you can feel them down here. When I lived on the top floor of one of these buildings, back when I could walk up 5 flights of stairs and not have a heart attack, several times I'd be on the top floor and you just feel it start to shake, and then you realize that there were, and your phone would go off, and there was an aftershocks of an earthquake. We're on granite, is it called granite schists here? Anyway, Manhattan is built on super granite. That's why they can build all those towers. Brooklyn, we have some tall towers as well, but a slightly different soil composition, but very similar at the same time. But my point here is that since the buildings flex, the cement also has to flex. And with the modern day cements that these contractors use it's called pointing the building, pointing the brick, putting new cement around the bricks. You can see I can just see where it's going to break out again, because it separates from the brick, it cracks. Part of that is because they didn't prep the surface correctly. Don't get me started. Prep is everything with cement. And it pops out. And I'm like, that's happening because the cement is way too hard. The brick has a flex, the cement has a flex, and the new cement doesn't, so it pops out. But that brings us back to Project Camp, and they are actually using the right kinds of lime-based mortars to rebuild a stone building like that. And it allows the building to breathe. Moisture is less of a problem with that. And it's kind of fun. There are 2 caveats I have to watching them. Safety is second, and chainsaw safety is third. And I'm like, okay, I've emailed them and said, hey, you might need some personal protection equipment there. And one of them responded in one of their update videos that the people that come to work there, they try to get them to wear the safety equipment and they don't. And I'm like, well, you could just tell them that they have to leave if they don't wear the safety equipment. I think workers' comp and all that kind of thing in America is much more litigious, I think, than it is in Europe. So maybe it's not much of as high of a priority. I don't know. That aside, I admire what they're trying to do. I think it's a pretty big hill to tackle to try and get a sustainable community. Any community has what I call a cast of characters. We now live in a co-op apartment building again. And that can be great, or that can go very south. It just depends on the composition of the people in the building. And when you move into a co-op building, there's, probably 4 other apartments, and they already live here, and they have, their ways of doing things, and you have to kind of like figure out where you fit in. But it's hard to, I think, on a larger scale, have perhaps consensus, kind of like a consensus governance, which I have done. It is difficult to do even in a small group. To see consensus in a larger group is probably very hard. What were those protests called? Take Over Wall Street ones? They were trying to, I don't know if they succeeded. I just read about this in the paper and saw it on TV, but they would try and build consensus among the different people that are squatting around. There's a park right above Trinity Church. Yeah, just north of Trinity Church, I think was the park where they occupy. It's called Occupy Wall Street. Wow, what a tangent here. Anyway, it is cool. And some of the people actually have some pretty good skills, which I like. And anyone that can build roof trusses out of nothing, with basically a square and a circular saw and a tape measure and a chalk line, that's amazing. It would require me going to the web and typing in all the information and use their sites that'll put out the dimensions for your roof trusses. And then I like that they recycle clay tiles for the roofs And they have, made friends in the different towns. And now when someone is replacing the clay tiles on one of the roofs or a building is being taken down, they drive their beater truck over there and they take all the usable old tiles. And they're all slightly different designs, but then they put them in different piles. And I like that they're reusing material. That's a big thing with me. When my friend redid the metal roof on his barn, the sheets that they were taking off, they were bent. They had some rust on them. But I took like 20 of them and I built essentially a metal roof over our spring and cistern. And I just wire brushed the sheet metal and used rust reformer or rust converter on it. It comes in a spray can from Rust-Oleum, I think. And then I painted the heck out of them with I had some outdoor brown paint, oil-based paint, which is rock solid, I think. And they're fine. And actually I have some more left over and I'm bummed that I didn't grab more because I have to re-roof the back of my garage, which has a little shed attached to the back, and that has moss growing on it, and that's bad. And metal roofs are great. But anyway, and they make it all happen. They bought a excavator, a mini excavator, and that's a whole drama because they tried to buy one from Scotland. And I'm like, the first video, I'm like, this is not a good idea. So it's a pretty good story. And then they crowdfunded the purchase of that, which you'll just have to watch it. But anyway, yeah, that's a thing. In the first cool stuff, by the way, I will link to the archive versions of these newsletters. That's the other thing I like is that I can build an archive of these newsletters because they're evergreen in a sense, evergreen content. Big word, But Austin Kleon is author of more than 3 books. His big one is Steal Like an Artist. And he's just a big sharer of stuff to do and inspire by. And he's like, hey, I made this mini book with lino block printing. And here's how I did it. And he is on Substack. And the way he gets more people to be paid subscribers is that like you can download the template for this or the PDF of the book by becoming a paid member on Substack. And I don't blame him for that. You got your bills to pay. Kind of like what I do on Patreon, offering the after show and stuff like that, kind of the behind the scenes stuff. Today, I was looking for pictures of maple syrup evaporators I had built, and I ran across some pictures of one of our previous labs, Charlie Pup. And so I shared that with the patrons. I have an app and I can just go boop and post pictures. I do that not every day, but quite a bit. Also in that first newsletter was this really cool black and white camera that I learned about. There's several people on YouTube that have made videos about this camera, there's a bunch of them out there. Some of them are incredibly garbage. The one I bought is really quite nice. I mean, it's not something you want to take on the Appalachian Trail or in a mountain or something, but it prints on thermal paper like your credit card slips and that. And it looks really cool. It's just this instant gratification. And it's not like Polaroid where it costs like a gazillion dollars a print. It's pennies per print, I think it is. And I bought one that had a SD card in it, and it has video built into it. And it's built for kids. And I'm reading a lot of the comments on Amazon, at least for the one that I bought. I'll link in the show notes here for you, because there is an affiliate link, of course. It was like $30 though. And I bought for $10, I bought 15 more rolls of the thermal paper. But it's a great camera to give your kids because if they break it, okay, at $30. But it also shows them that they could take pictures and get a kind of a instant gratification thing. And I mean, maybe the light bulb will go off in one of 10 kids' heads that are like, oh, I want to know more about this. I want to make more pictures. I want to make images. I want to paint. I want to create video art. I was exposed to a lot of art stuff early, and it's a big reason I am who I am. So yeah, even as a kid, I was like the art weirdo, kind of a closet art weirdo. But anyway, so that kid's camera, I thought that was a lot of fun. People seem to respond. If you have bought one of those cameras, let me know. The last thing in the first one is Strangers on a Bench, which is a podcast. I know nothing about the guy that started the podcast. His name is Tom Rosenthal. And I'll read you just a comment here. Tom Rosenthal approaches a stranger on a park bench and asks if he can sit down next to them and record their conversation. That's the byline of the podcast. And it works. You can just hear him kind of turn on the microphone, and he walks up to someone, and I don't know what park he's in. I'm presuming it's in London. And he's like, "Hi, I have a podcast and I interview people in the park. Can I talk to you?" And I've never heard anyone say no, but maybe he just doesn't play those on the podcast. And people are like, "Yeah, I'll talk to you." And they're not celebrities. They're not influencers. They're just people in a park. If they're in a park sitting, reading a book or just enjoying themselves, and they say yes to a podcast interview, they're probably going to be an interesting person or a creative, interesting person. And that's the gist of it. I like it for it not trying to be anything but what it is. I mean, I don't think I try too hard on Garden Fork podcast to make it anything than what it was. There is kind of an influencer who said, "I'll be on anyone's podcast if you email me." Well, he's not really. It's Cam. What's his name? Campbell something. He wrote the book about your mind. Your brain is a houseboat. Your head is a houseboat, which is a great book on mental health in a whack way of explaining it, but it worked really well for me. So I might have him I'm going to email him and ask if he wants to be on the podcast. But anyway, my goal is not to have famous people on podcasts. It seems like a lot of podcasts do that, or there's famous people interviewing famous people. This is an average guy interviewing average people, and some of them have some really great stories. There is one episode 7, that is an adult episode. So you don't want to play that when you have young people in the car or in your kitchen there. But I don't think any of the others, I wonder if they have like a mark about the adult content. Because like when I upload the podcast, I have to pick whether it's, I can't remember the word. Of course, I can't remember any words anymore. But you have to note whether it's has some content that kids shouldn't listen to. Anyway, it's called Strangers on a Bench. And it's good. It's if you want to make a podcast, start with that. Interview your family. Interview your grandmother. You can do it on your phone. Do you know how many of the Garden Fork radio podcasts I record on my phone? You probably can tell because I'm like, "Hey, I'm Eric and I'm walking around." But I've even done ones in people's houses, and I just set up the phone. Sometimes I bring 2 phones, actually. I have an older iPhone that records really well too. So yeah, there you go. All right. Sip of water time here. Actually, this is mint tea, I think. There you go. You just got little listen to me take mint tea in. So the second cool stuff email, I'm calling it cool stuff. If you have a better suggestion on that, let me know, This is a really fun video for me. There's been a big push for probably 10 years on YouTube to tell better stories or storytelling. Make even a DIY video storytelling. A side note here, I don't think Garden Fork is a DIY channel. I think Garden Fork is a video blog masquerading as a DIY channel. I do like to show things, and I don't know if the word is teach things, but tell you anyone can have a flamethrower, or a rolling tool cart. You should all have a rolling. I have 3. Anyway, but in my on my YouTube app on my iPad, you can set things to watch later, and I probably have 100 things on there, which are videos that I want to share with you. One of them that I've probably watched, I think 10 times, the title is The Far Side of Storytelling. And Here's the title: Why the Far Side is a Masterclass in Storytelling. And my comment is simple yet mind-blowing. I love it. It's little clips of the guy Gary. Can I click on the link? Oh no, the link isn't there. I can't remember his name, but you know what I'm talking about here. And let me just start over. I'm going to go to the YouTube channel and we'll start from there. How's that? The name of the channel is called The Gaze. And Gary Larson is the author, creator of The Far Side. I guess it's called a cartoon. But he talks about how there's such simplicity in The Far Side. And it can be, usually it's just one panel, one image. And sometimes it's really subtle. Sometimes it's pretty obvious. But there is a whole story in each one of those. One of my favorites is, it's actually, I think it's 4 panels or 3, but it's 4 or 5 cows on a bit of a hill, and they're all standing up smoking cigarettes. And there's one higher up on the hill where the road comes, and he turns around and says, "Car," and they all get down on their all fours. The car goes by, and then they stand back up again. I think it's brilliant. It's really, and it's so simple. There's no like big run up to a joke or something. It just is what it is. And that is what makes stuff on YouTube really successful. I mean, you don't have to have a big build up on it, Did I read you this comment about the guy who found stuff in his father's tool cart? I don't think I did this. I read stuff in my head and I can't remember if I shared it with you or not. That's kind of why I started the Cool Stuff newsletter. I should probably make sure this is recording still, shouldn't I? I use Audacity to record audio in my on my computer here, and I have a Rode pod mic. All right, tea has been drank. Recently, I have a couple of videos about hacking your rolling tool cart. I have to make another one because a bunch of people have commented on the previous ones and said, "Hey, this is what I do." So I'll read the story. Let me start off. I will read the story. A few years ago, when my father passed, I ended up with his 80s era Craftsman rollaway. In other words, a rolling tool cart. Hadn't seen it in a very long time. Anyways, when I opened the drawers, I remembered that I had helped my father line the drawers with a thick rubber matting. Over the years, and because of several moves across the country, tools had fallen to the very bottom of the chest under the bottom drawer. Because when you tilt one of these back, the tools might slip over the back side of the shelf, the sliding shelves, and it falls to the bottom of the tool cart. And at the bottom of the tool cart, there's about 1.5 inches before the bottom drawer. So if you pull out the bottom drawer and look in there, you probably are seeing some tools that you're missing. Okay. Over the years, and because of several moves, tools had fallen to the very bottom of the chest under the bottom drawer. So I pull out the bottom drawer, and in among the random tools, okay, I pulled out the bottom drawer. In among the random tools, there was a gallon-sized Ziploc bag, and in that bag was $5,000 cash and a Smith & Wesson .380 pistol. Just sitting there with a magnet keeping it from sliding around. So it was a magnet in the Ziploc bag with the cash and the pistol. Dad was in the habit of hiding things like guns and cash because he had grown up very poor in Newark, New Jersey in the 50s, especially if he had ingested a few cocktails. He would also forget where he had hidden his stuff. I called my baby sister and I told her how I had found this and said I would give her half the money. She refused it, so instead I split up the money among her daughter and my 2 kids, and I told them it was a final birthday gift from their grandfather, and they were to absolutely to do nothing with it except blow it on something fun and frivolous. So that's pretty cool, huh? And that's the kind of comments I sometimes get on videos. It's just weird, but it's flattering, and I love it. It's that kind of every person to that every person kind of thing, much like the talk on the park bench. Does that work? Does that make sense? And then I went and looked on Amazon and I put together a little buying list of rolling carts. There are some good rolling carts on Amazon. Do not buy the cheap ones. They look like they're garbage, and there are constant complaints in the comments about the boxes that they come in being broken or the toolboxes dented, something like that, And the last thing I want to talk about is these 2,000-year-old mounds that are in Ohio, believe it or not. It's basically Ohio's version of Stonehenge. And I have seen a documentary on this. I think it was on PBS. But there are these mounds made from Native Americans, and it's called an Atlas Obscura. These 2,000-year-old mounds trace the path of the moon. After spending the last century as a golf course, the octagon earthworks are now protected and celebrated for their ancient American origins. And what these mounds did was track the position of the moon over the year. And I guess the mounds were in private hands for a very long time after the Native Americans were made to not want to be there anymore, for lack of a better word. And then there was a golf course built there. And the mounds are kind of perfect for a golf course because it's, it could be the part of a sand trap. You can make it into a pond. I don't know. But archaeologists, I don't know if that's the right word, scientists figured out that these were set up to indicate, to see when the moon was in a certain position. And that takes some brain power to figure that out. And also for the haul all the dirt and everything. And it's pretty cool. So, let's see. Let me see. Just outside Ohio's capital, a wall of earth rises 5 feet from the smooth ground in a perfect circle, 1,000 feet wide. Standing inside that ring of mounded terra firma today, you can see the moon rise right where the walls break, and an ancient passageway leads to an enormous octagonal arena. Thousands of years ago, the Native Americans who built it would have been standing there in that very spot, watching the same celestial scene. Thousands of years ago. That's pretty cool. Yeah. All right. So those are in the first two cool stuff emails. Here we go. Eric's going to plug the email newsletter. Yeah, there'll be a link in the show notes here, or you can go to gardenfork.tv/email and also sign up. What I wanted to talk about in the after show for my patrons is some of the interesting data that what people clicked on. What was the most popular link in each email and what was the least popular one in each email. And I'll talk about that. And a little bit about what I've learned from writing emails. I would love to hear your thoughts. Do you have something cool that you want to share? You could either come on the show maybe if you want, or you could record a voice recording in your phone and email that to me. It's radio@gardenfork.tv. Or just send me a note saying, hey, I don't like what you're doing, or I do like what you're doing. Either one would be good. All right? Go out and do cool stuff and make it a great day. I'll see you. Garden Fork Radio is produced by Garden Fork Media LLC in Brooklyn, New York. The music in the show is licensed from audioblocks.com and uniquetracks.com.